Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tosh Talks, and I'm your host, Tosh Berman. And today I want to focus this particular episode on Lou Reed. Lou Reed has been in my life in some form or fashion, not personally, I never met him, though I did see him once at the Russian Tea Room in New York City many, many years ago. But we never talked, we never met, and he doesn't know of my existence when he was alive. But I was very much aware of his presence in my life. My first time I heard of the word Lou Reed together was when I was probably about 12 or 13 years old. And my father, Wallace Berman, who's an artist, brought in the first Velvet Underground and Nico album to our household. And I wanted to tell you as a teenager that I heard this album and I totally loved it, and I became a drug addict, wore black, and I wore black eyeliner because it's one album. That is not the truth whatsoever. The fact is, when that album first came into our household, I very much avoided that album. One, at that time, I was listening to music like the Yardbirds and the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Loving Spoonful, that music. The Velvet Underground represented it to me at the time, Andy Warhol, which is a 12 or 13-year-old, and I didn't meet Warhol at the time or before that. That has no bearing with Velvet Underground in my life in that sense. But when I think of Andy Warhol, I immediately think of it as being a fine art project or an art project. So anything that has Andy Warhol's name attached to it, even though it's a record album and it seems to be a band called the Velvet Underground, I immediately thought it was an art record and not a pop album. And as a 12 or 13-year-old, I just listened to English or American rock and roll records. And for sure, though I could tell that the Velvet Underground had electric guitars and there's a drummer in the band, I felt by my gut feeling it was not rock and roll. It was till many years later, I think I heard Velvet Underground's fourth album, Loaded. It is like around 1970, 1971. And I was sort of introduced to Loaded by the TV show called The American Family, which was a PBS series, a documentary, a reality show, one of the first reality shows on, at the time, a typical American family, but as you watch on, obviously not a typical American family of sorts. And one of the leading characters or personalities in The American Family was a fellow named Lance Loud. And there was footage of Lance Loud in New York playing this one album. You can hear in the background, and it was Velvet Underground's Loaded. And I went, okay, Velvet Underground, Loaded. I have that first album, you know, and in the record rack downstairs in our family home. And at the same time, there was a radio station in Los Angeles called KMET. And there was a disc jockey named B. Mitchell Reed who played, this is like during the height of the FM rock and roll world, where they play like one side of an album, you know, side one all the way through with no commercial breaks whatsoever. And B. Mitchell Reed played two songs off of Velvet Underground Loaded. One is Rock and Roll, and one is Sweet Jane. And when I heard Rock and Roll, the song, and Sweet Jane by Velvet Underground, it was like a lightning bolt struck me. The riffs of both songs were like so incredibly catchy, but there's a certain type of maturity with the lyrics and a certain, it just stood away apart from anything else, any other music of that time in 1970, which I think was a time of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, early Neil Young, you know, Joni Mitchell, those type of people who I did not listen to a great deal at that time. I was more into the glam rock thing, or the glitter glam rock thing, and 60s pop. I never was really into the folk, James Taylor type of stuff. So after getting loaded, not physically, mentally loaded, but the album loaded, I went back to, well, not went back to, I put on the Velvet Underground and Nico album, the one with the banana peel on the cover. And listening to that album at that time, it struck me as being a raw piece of work, very much different from anything else I heard at the time. And the mixture of noise with rhythm and Lou Reed's, at the time, seemed decadent lyrics, or his stance, very adult-like, was really a new thing to me. And at this time, I was in my late teens. So so we had this one Velvet Underground album, the Banana Peel album, for some years before I actually heard it at my home. And even the song titles, like Heroin, sounded so scary to me as a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old. I would never play it. But as a teenager, I mean, a late teenager, of course. And what struck me about the Velvet Underground, and what made it so unique compared to anything else, that, you know, everything I play and I like was music for my generation, or for teenagers, or for kids. Velvet Underground are clearly made for adult ears. It's not teenage music. They play the instruments of a teenage world, electric guitar and drums, and, you know, there's a viola, which is a very strange instrument in a rock context at the time. But when I listen to the Velvet Underground, I'm going into an adult world. And this was like the first time I ever realized there was a difference between my teenage youth and approaching a work of art or a product that is definitely made for adults, played by adults, but using a medium of teenage music, which to me meant rock and roll. So I remember buying the first RCA Records Lou Reed solo album in great participation because I really love Loaded. And although the songs on the first Lou Reed album were pretty great, the songs themselves, the performance or the recording of it was very dull to me. It just did not appeal to I was very disappointed. But 7 or 8 months later, Lou Reed ends up with within the company of David Bowie and Mick Ronson, and both of them. So I think Bowie is technically the producer of the album, and Mick Ronson was the arranger. But obviously Mick Ronson had a lot to do with Lou Reed's Transformer album. And at the time, the height of the Ziggy Stardust, Raw Power, Iggy Pop, the whole David Bowie world was just exploding in front of me. It was so exciting. And to have somebody from the past, Lou Reed from the Velvet Underground, being part of this new explosion was very, very, very a great importance in my life at the time. And so Transformer to me is like the ultimate Lou Reed album, but he also got his beautiful side of Lou. I mean, there's a lot of great ballads like Perfect Day, and Goodnight Ladies, and that sort of charming Lou, besides the whole ambitious Lou, or, the Waiting for the Man Lou, or, the Heroin Lou. And, from the very first Velvet's album, which came out in 65, 66, to obviously up to Transformer, Lou Reed could not do any wrong. There was four Velvet Underground albums officially. Then there was like 2 other Velvet Underground releases, like stuff that didn't get released at the time. All fantastic, and Transformer, incredible. And though I did not like the album Lou Reed, the first solo album, the songs on it are pretty good. And it strikes me that, along with David Bowie and Ray Davies and Ron Mel Sparks, Lou Reed is up there as one of the great songwriters. And specifically, Lou Reed is a great American songwriter. I think he's very American, very New York, of course, and his point of view, his sensibility, and the mixture of his love for doo-wop music and 50s rock and roll, and mixed in with sort of the John Cale avant-garde side, who John Cale was part of Velvet Underground. That noise that Cale was making, and the whole Lamont Young and Tony Conrad influence meets Lou Reed's romanticism of rock and roll and literature and poetry was an incredible combination. It's just like a perfect meeting ground. So it's sort of like the Beatles were sort of like the beautiful summer of '67, the summer of love. But Velvet Underground is like the summer of despair and hate. But like the Beatles were so textured with all their influences, so were the Velvet Underground. There's the Warhol influence. There's Delmore Schwartz, the great poet that Lou Reed was a student of at college. Then there's John Cale's entire avant-garde world at that time, who, Tony Conrad, Lamont Young, that whole East Village, downtown New York, new music, Fluxus-related stuff was happening. So Velvet Underground combines all those resources and made beautiful music. And the solo Lou Reed always echoes from the Velvets. He never really got away from the Velvets. He probably wanted to get away from the Velvets just for identity's sake or branding's sake. But the truth is, those first 4 Velvet Underground albums defined Lou Reed, and it built a foundation for Lou Reed. And Lou Reed went on to make solo albums, of course, as I mentioned, Transformer and the first Lou Reed album. But the interesting thing about Lou Reed, and like David Bowie in a sense, Lou Reed did not stick by the numbers. He did not give what you think you're going to get for each Lou Reed album. At the time, you don't know what the next Lou Reed album is going to be like. You know the voice of Lou Reed, but God knows what kind of music he's going to do. And when he put out Berlin, like 6 months or 7 months after Transformer, it's probably the one album that defines the iconic Lou Reed image. Lou Reed is a black leather jacket, decadent, bisexual, pansy-sexual, heterosexual. We don't even know what sexual he is, but definitely a drug addict, at least on the record, and dealing with really harsh family issues or personality issues or relationship issues. And Berlin was like this soap opera album. And many consider, when it came out, people criticized it because it wasn't Transformer. But it's a really, really good album. I don't think it's a masterpiece though. I think side 1 is a masterpiece. Side 2 is kind of weak. Weak in theme-wise, because it is a concept album. It does have a narrative, and I feel like the story is not that interesting, but the sonic aspect of side 1 was fantastic, and the songs are incredible. And then after Berlin, he did Rock and Roll Animal, the live album, and he became like a sort of a mainstream rock star of sorts, which of course is totally ironic because Lou Reed is anything but a mainstream rock person or even a rock and roll personality. He's a very complex, very troublesome sometimes, and a very brilliant observer of life, and especially his life and how he looks at things. And the other Lou Reed albums I feel like were a total masterpiece was Street Hassle, which he did like, mid-career almost. And for me, Street Hassle is the last Lou Reed masterpiece. It's just a raw, noisy, weirdly dense production of like these great songs. And some of the songs come from the Velvet Underground days and, and stuff he was writing at the time. And afterwards, and I'm just talking in very general terms. I'm not talking about album by album now. But then for a while, Lou Reed got married, and he got very sort of domestically. And it became sort of like, he made some records like, I'm happy to be married, I'm happy I'm living on the farm in New Jersey, and I'm a sort of average guy. And he sort of lost me at that point, because to me, Lou Reed is never an average guy. And for many years, I sort of kept track of Lou Reed, but not like strictly, following every album, especially his later albums. The ones he made the last 10 or 15 years. I pretty much ignore them, actually. Well, a week ago, I went to the library. I loaned borrowed Lou Reed, A Life by Anthony DeCurtis, this book right here. Brand new book, if you're looking at this now. And it's a really, really fun, it's a really interesting biography. Lou Reed is famous for not liking journalists and being very hard on journalists, but for whatever reason, and probably just by pure luck, he liked Anthony DeCurtis. So they did talk. DeCurtis did interview him. Lou Reed, I guess, enjoyed the interview with him. Lou Reed passed away before knowing that Anthony DeCurtis was going to write a huge biography on him. I don't know if he would have approved of that, but DeCurtis does talk to everybody connected to Reed's life, and or past interviews with other publications and other journalists. And it's a really, really good book. It's a good biography. And one of the things I appreciate about the book is one, DeCurtis obviously loves Lou Reed as a person, and he loves Lou Reed's music. Yet, he totally acknowledges Lou Reed's bad aspects of his personality, and they're quite clear, and I think everybody knows who read various interviews about Lou Reed or heard people talk about Lou Reed know all about that. But what is interesting is that Anthony DeCurtis actually goes into each Lou Reed album in a very exciting way. You know, like it's not like him going, oh, he's going to talk about this album, I don't care about this record, blah, blah, blah. But him writing about these questionable albums, in my mind at least, made me interested to hear Lou again. So after I read the book, I went to like Apple Music and listened to the Lou records I don't have. Like I have the ones I mentioned so far. I do have it on vinyl, and I just sort of, you know, I remember I heard something. I mean, I heard like the Blue Mask, which is sort of the Blue Mask album is sort of the typical domestic Lou Reed identity. And although I liked the music and performance, I was sort of not. I think I was too young to deal with middle-aged Lou Reed. You know, having a family. Well, I didn't have a family, but a wife. You know, probably a dog, motorcycle, living in the countryside. Not very exciting for me. But one thing that intrigued me is I know Lou Reed's been getting a lot of bad critical responses for his later albums. Total Vodka, in case you're curious. And one of the albums that everybody seems to hate, at least what I read, is an album that he did with God Knows with Metallica. Lou Reed and Metallica making a record. Lou Reed writing the lyrics, the words, Metallica co-writing the music with Lou Reed, I presume. The album's called Lulu, which is based on sort of the old Louis Brooks Lulu films, and it was an opera by Berg. And the story of a prostitute, a sort of good time girl where she gets murdered. One thinks a totally atypical Lou Reed theme, which I think a lot of people are negative towards. Like, here's Lou Reed going back to, you know, murder, mayhem, sex, blah, blah, blah. Easy deasy for him. And when the Metallica Lou Reed Lulu came out, the reviews I read were really, really harsh. And the stuff I read on Facebook, like commentary about my friends and stuff, were very, very harsh. So, of course, I did not pick up that album because I thought, not going to be interesting. Anyway, reading DeCurtis' book, it made me interested to hear Lulu, so I want to hear it. I think more due to Metallica. Metallica is not easily findable. You have to go on YouTube to find Metallica music if you don't own it. So on YouTube, there is Lulu. You can find Lulu on YouTube if you want to hear it. But anyway, 2 days ago, I bought the album, Lulu, Lou Reed and Metallica, and I played it. The worst album ever, some people said. Terrible record. Crap. A shameful last album by Lou Reed, his last statement, which is terrible, is in fact a masterpiece. It's incredible album. It, you know, I don't always agree with my hero David Bowie when he says he likes something. Like, for instance, he likes Arcade Fire, which is totally beyond me, but that's okay. No disrespect to Arcade Fire fans. But he told Laurie Anderson after Lou passed away, Laurie Anderson was married to Lou Reed as well, a great artist herself. He told Laurie Anderson that Lulu is Lou's masterpiece and his best album ever. And in the future, people will acknowledge that like they will acknowledge Berlin. It's a great Lou Reed album. And that is totally true. Lulu is a double album, 10 songs. Nothing is shorter than like 6 minutes. And it's Metallica riffing like crazy. It's a loud record, but it has their side effects or undertones of electronica and strings. And the way it's built, the way the music is built was the riffing of Metallica, Lou's old man's voice, and the strings and the electronica is a beautiful foundation. It's a beautiful sound. And to be honest, I have the fog's idea why anyone, especially a Lou Reed fan, would find this a bad album or a boring record. It's anything but boring, and clearly anything but bad. And one of the great songs, well, one song, Ice Honey, that is a classic Lou Reed riff and song. How anybody could hate Ice Honey is beyond me, but clearly the masterpiece of this album, and probably one of Lou Reed's best songs ever, is a song called Junior Dad. And reading DeCurtis' book, his biography, and reading other things about Lou Reed and comments that Lou Reed has made in interviews about his father, is clearly he was not crazy about his dad. What is not clear is that other people who met Lou Reed's father or observed Lou's and his father's relationship were puzzled why Lou Reed felt so strongly about his dad. I mean, for one, the parents did order or agree to Lou Reed to have shock treatment when he was a teenager in the hopes of curing his depression or his homosexuality at the time. Not really clear. This, of course, disturbed Lou Reed greatly. And Lou Reed never forgave his parents, specifically his father. But again, other people who observed that relationship or met the father liked the dad and not clearly understood Lou Reed's total hatred for his father. But Junior Dad, it does express incredible disappointment and anger towards his father. And it's a 19-minute song and has an incredible drum riff, an incredible guitar riff pretty much throughout the song. And the last, 10 minutes is like this sort of electronic orchestration, beautiful ambient music sounds. This sort of ends the record, and the way it ends Lou Reed's life. And it is a great Lou Reed album. And it kind of surprised me because I sort of forgot about Lou Reed for a while, and I totally didn't think about him until I started reading the Anthony DeCurtis book. And I got the records out again. I always listen to the Velvets. That never fails me. But I rediscovered Lou Reed solo. And again, and in a nutshell, I appreciate Lou Reed for, at the very minimum, that he has always tried to do new things in his solo career. He never just did a typical Lou Reed record. And I think people's mind they think Lou Reed just did typical Lou Reed stuff, but he didn't. You listen to him carefully. He definitely did experimental music. He did theater music. He did like a jazz album of sorts. You know, he did the sort of retro Velvet sounding stuff, but he consistently changed, or he was consistently challenging himself. That's always great for an artist, per one. And the fact, like David Bowie with Bowie's Black Star, and like the later Scott Walker recordings, Lou Reed is up there with those guys and making a brilliant masterpiece. And Lulu, the album, with Metallica, and I never heard a Metallica record, only was this Lou Reed record, oddly enough, is brilliant, a great album. Buy it. And as you buy the album, you're gonna play it, you're gonna thank me, and you're gonna thank me because you heard all those bad people saying bad things about Lulu, and they're totally wrong, including my friends. My friends are wrong about Lulu, the Lou Reed record. So when you buy it and you play the record, and you watch my show, remember to subscribe to my channel. Because I'm a person that takes a stance in life. I'm pro Lulu, pro Lou Reed. I guess I'm pro Metallica as well. I have to hear more Metallica. But Lou, Velvet are not going to fail you. Subscribe to me, and I'll be yours forever. This is Tosh Talks. I'm Tosh Berman. Goodbye.